We talked to the Zombies about one of their most memorable hits, Time of the Season. Our special guest, Colin Blunstone, the singer, and the writer, Rod Argent. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music. I mean, the intro to the song, which was done by Rod Argent, is, I think, one of the most memorable beginnings of any hit single. It was recorded at Abbey Road Studio from arguably their best album, Odyssey and Oracle. 1967. They were in Abbey Road Studio right after the Beatles. But first, Rod, talking about that beginning.
Well, that was me. I mean, I wrote the song, and I always used to write the bass and drum parts as well. On She's Not There, the very first thing I ever wrote was that opening bass and drum lick. And on Time of the Season, that was me as well, I'm afraid. So I have to take credit. What actually happened was that it was in the air that the band was going to split up in that first incarnation. And the reason for that was that the two guys who weren't writers had no money, absolutely no money, because we had less success in the UK than anywhere else around the world. And at the time, people didn't travel all that much. It was a very different time. And because we hadn't had any hit singles for about 3 years, in the UK, even though we later found out around the world we often had a hit single here and there, but we were about to break up because of that reason, even though Chris and I had a reasonable income because of all the stuff around the world. But we'd become very frustrated with the way our previous singles to Odyssey and Oracle had been recorded, and we felt that they weren't sounding the way we wanted them to sound. So Chris and I said, if we are going to break up, if there's a danger of that, we have to produce an album ourselves and get the songs across in the way that we feel we can hear them. And we did that with Odyssey and Oracle. We got a deal with CBS. They didn't pay us very much money, but we went into Abbey Road. We were the band that immediately followed the Beatles when they did Sgt. Pepper, and we recorded Odyssey and Oracle, and that was the reason. And we came out of that feeling that we'd done the very best we could, that the album sounded great, and we got some great reviews, but it just didn't sell. No one was interested. So we thought, okay, that's it. I went off and formed Argent, and also Chris White and I, Chris, the original bass player, and I had a production company, and we produced Colin Blunstone's first solo album 1 year. So that was the story at that time. But, you know, and I thought that the album was going to be dead. After it had been out and the first single hadn't done anything in the UK, we just gave up on it and we moved on to our other projects. And then suddenly, as you know, Time of the Season became number one in Cashbox at the time, number two, I think it was, in Billboard. And strangely enough, 50 years to the very day that Cashbox published its chart with Time of the Season in number one, that was the date of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, 50 years to the day. So that felt like a bit of a marker too.
Well, I mean, again, just to tell you, The Time of the Season was the last song we recorded on Odyssey and Oracle. It had been finished in the morning, just before we recorded it in the afternoon. And I was a bit unsure of that song. And Rod was in the control room because he wrote it, and I'm in the studio. And he's trying to coach me through it, specifically the phrasing. And we were very short of money. I thought we were going to run out of recording time. And I'd got a big clock right in front of me, and I'm picturing it now, and a red light underneath, just to prove that we're actually recording. And Rod was saying, no, God, can you just sing that a bit more on the beat, or can you push this bit? Can you do this? And it develops into quite a heated conversation. And of course, I'm shouting back at him through the mic so everyone in the control room can hear. All the band, all the engineers, all the Abbey Road people were there. And it got really heated, and we end up with shouting at one another. And I said to him, listen, if you know this song so well, you come in here and you bloody sing it. And he said, you're the bloody lead singer. You stand there till you get it right. And so this is the general what was going on at the time. While I'm singing, it's the time of the season for loving. We're actually screaming at one another in the downtime in between the takes. And it always sort of amuses me when I think back to what was going on. 5 minutes later, it's all forgotten, and we go down the pub and have a pint, and of course we're best mates again. But just during the vocal on that track. I'm so glad that you mentioned that those wonderful performers like that vocal. And just, as sort of an amusing sideline, just to let you know what was going on at the time when I sang that.
Time of the season. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, it's difficult to say 100%. I will say that all the sort of zeitgeist of the time was the whole youth rebellion against violence and, against the Vietnam War, of course. That was a very major thing that was going on. Even though, in inverted commas, the love and peace thing, we could see very much the naivety of a lot of it. Still, it was a very, very strong thing that was going on. And I always felt that for the first time, for instance, the youth of the time were able to see some evidence of what war was firsthand, because for the first time there was some footage coming back and shown on television that wasn't doctored to such an extent that you couldn't see the violence of it and the reality of it. And it, for the first time in history, really, because of that and communications, the youth of that time was able to make a real impact on political thinking. And, that love and peace thing was very, very strong. It couldn't help but affect you to a certain extent. And that was in the air. And that was sort of behind the song. There was also a little nod in that song towards one of my favourite of all-time songs, Summertime, the George Gershwin song. Yeah. And, for instance, where Ira Gershwin, as it was, wrote the words, wrote, your daddy's rich and your mama's good looking. I just tailored a couple of phrases into what's your name, who's your daddy, is he rich like me? But the next line shows what I meant by that, because I didn't mean is he rich in terms of having loads of money. I meant, has he taken the time that you need to show you how to live? It was that sort of richness, really. So it was those things that were floating around, and other associations which you can't literally explain, really. It's just like with a lot of songs, some of it is how you interpret the words and what they mean to you, I think.
One more thing about Time of the Season. I know that John Lennon left behind his Mellotron at Abbey Road Studio. What part of that album did that instrument play on?
Almost all of it. Well, not almost all of it, but probably half of it. And it wouldn't have appeared if John hadn't, and I never asked him, I never asked his permission. I just used it, and it was just there. But they left quite a few things around the studio, because literally we walked in the week after they walked out, having finished Sgt. Pepper. We didn't record the Odyssey all at once. We recorded it over a period of 6 months, actually. But we had very little money. So each track was basically done in a 3-hour session, as I remember. But we were writing the tracks for the album as we went along. But he did leave his Mellotron there. And after we'd used it, on the first couple of sessions, the engineers, who were great, actually, absolutely lovely people, made sure it was available for us for the rest of the album. So it became a real building block of the album.
Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. We're still clipping up the Rod Argent video, which Shem Von Schreck was with us during the whole thing. He's not on camera the whole time. When he was asking a question, he'd be on camera. When I asked a question, I'd be on camera. And Shem really wanted to talk about the Argent album Circus, which influenced his life. Top 5. We'll have that on here for you as well. And you can also see it on Shem's YouTube channel. Just look up Shem Von Schreck. Of course, he's the Toto bassist, worked with Kenny Loggins and Don Felder as well, and a whole bunch of other people. Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. I'm John Beaudin from Rocky Street Music.